Most people spend their whole lives wanting love, wanting money, wanting peace, wanting breakthroughs, and they don't even notice that the very act of wanting keeps everything they long for just out of reach. It feels like movement, but it's actually a quiet form of stagnation, and that's why so many feel stuck even when they pray, visualize, or try to stay positive. Neville Goddard taught something so simple and so uncomfortable that most people skip it. Desire is never the problem. Staying in desire is. It's almost ironic. The human mind believes desire is the beginning of fulfillment, when in truth, it is often the very thing that prevents it. Because the more you desire, the more you subtly affirm that you don't yet have. And the universe, like a perfect mirror, reflects that state right back. That's why you'll meet people who say, "I've been imagining, but nothing changes." Or, "I really want this, but it feels so far away." They're imagining about the end, not from the end. They know the theory of the law of assumption explained, but they never cross the invisible bridge where imagination creates reality. They stay in longing, never stepping into the wish-fulfilled Neville method that shifts everything. Living the desire, actually living it, is different. It's quieter, more natural, almost ordinary. It's the moment you stop chasing and start becoming. It's the moment you stop hoping the desire will happen and start assuming the end manifestation is already yours. And ironically, that's when everything begins to move. You've probably felt that shift before, maybe for a split second. A moment where the fear loosened, the doubt paused, the inner noise softened, and something in you whispered, "It's done." That's the doorway. That's the difference between desire versus fulfillment Neville talked about. That's the moment when feeling it real Neville style stops being theory and becomes identity. And once you cross that threshold, even for a breath, something changes in how the world responds to you. Synchronicities start appearing, paths open, people shift, opportunities align. Not because you're lucky, but because you're finally living in the end. You're finally embodying the truth Neville always pointed toward. Feeling is the secret. So today, let's go deeper than just think positive or just visualize. Let's examine the real shift, the internal movement from wanting to having, from longing to being, from imagining to inhabiting. Let's explore what it truly means to live the desire, not just desire it. And once you understand this, you'll never relate to your dreams the same way again. He often tells people that desire can feel intoxicating, almost like a surge of hope. It gives the illusion of movement, the sense that something big is about to unfold. But under that excitement, there's a subtle confession. I don't have it yet. That confession is what keeps the desired thing slightly out of reach, no matter how beautiful the longing feels. It's like stretching your hand towards something you never quite touch. He explains that living the desire is a completely different energy. It's not craving, not reaching, not imagining someday. It's stepping into a quiet, grounded certainty. Imagine someone wanting financial freedom. Desiring it feels electric, yes, but living it means waking up and choosing the inner identity of someone already abundant. It's the difference between saying "I hope" and breathing "I am." The shift happens inside, long before anything shows up outside. He has seen people confuse excitement with embodiment. They think the intensity of wanting means manifestation is close, when sometimes it means they're holding it further away. Desire carries a vibration of distance. Fulfillment carries a vibration of presence. And presence is where the law of assumption begins to work with ease. When he teaches this, people usually blink in surprise, because no one ever told them wanting and having are different states. Sometimes he shares a simple analogy. It's like standing outside a bakery, smelling the bread, imagining the taste, convincing yourself you're almost eating it. It feels real, but you're still outside. Desire is the smell. Living the desire is stepping inside, paying for the bread and taking a bite without hesitation. The 3D world might still look the same, but your identity has already crossed the threshold. He knows how tempting it is to stay in desire because it feels active, productive, spiritual even. People journal, affirm, visualize, pray, hoping their desire will one day ignite into fulfillment. But Neville Goddard taught that creation is finished, meaning fulfillment already exists in imagination. Desire is merely the spark, the invitation. It's not the door itself. Walking through the door requires embodying the wish-fulfilled Neville method, not just admiring it from the outside. He reminds the listener that living the desire doesn't mean pretending. It means feeling it real Neville style in a grounded, relaxed way. It's the natural feeling of, this is already mine, the same way someone might feel about owning their name. You don't desire your name, you live in it effortlessly. That's the energy of the fulfilled state, not forced emotion, not dramatic visualization, but a calm familiarity. He sometimes mentions that people use desire as emotional entertainment. They love the drama of dreaming big, imagining the future version of themselves. But the future version is just the present version in a different state. And states are accessible now. Neville used to say, you move from state to state by feeling, not by waiting for the world to change. Living the desire is a decision made in silence, not a performance made in longing. He gives an example. Someone wanting a loving relationship. Desiring it keeps them analyzing signs, hoping for messages, watching for clues. Living it means embodying the identity of someone already loved, already chosen, already important. The law of assumption explained through this lens becomes simple. The world mirrors who you are being, not what you are wanting. Changing identity is what shifts reality's response. He often emphasizes that the shift from desire to fulfillment feels surprisingly ordinary. People expect fireworks, but what they feel is peace. The nervous excitement fades, replaced by a quiet knowing. It's subtle, but it's the doorway into living in the end, the place where imagination creates reality without friction. This is where miracles start moving invisibly, rearranging the path long before you see evidence. And as he closes this part of the conversation, he lets the listener feel the next question rising naturally inside. If desire keeps the wish at a distance, what exactly brings it into fulfillment? That answer opens the door to the next topic. He always begins this topic with a simple truth that most people overlook. Desire is not the manifestation. It's merely the invitation to step into a new state. Desire appears to alert you to what is already possible for you. But it's only the spark, the initial flicker. If someone stops at desire, they're holding the match without ever lighting the fire. Neville Goddard insisted that the real transformation begins when you move from wishing into assuming, because assumption is the inner acceptance that creation is finished. He explains that assumption is not pretending, forcing, or faking confidence. It's an internal shift, a quiet of course feeling, the kind you don't even need to talk about because it feels natural. Imagine someone longing for financial freedom. Desire says, I want to be free. Assumption says, I am the kind of person who is financially free. It's identity, not hope. It's being, not seeking. And the moment identity shifts, the world begins to rearrange itself accordingly. He uses a relatable example, a person who wants a promotion at work. They might desire it, dream about it, visualize it, but when they assume it, something changes in their presence. They begin acting, thinking, and speaking as someone already trusted, already capable, already chosen. They walk differently, communicate differently, handle challenges differently. That's not delusion, that's alignment. And reality responds to alignment faster than it responds to desire. He often tells people that you can't receive something you don't believe you can hold. Desire alone doesn't create the container for the manifestation. Assumption does. It stretches the inner identity to match the outer result. Neville used to say that you must become the person who has the thing, and becoming isn't about effort, it's about letting go of the identity that doubts, hesitates, or feels unworthy. Assumption is stepping into a new self-concept with quiet authority. He sometimes laughs gently when people ask, "But how do I assume it?" Because the answer is simpler than most expect. You assume by feeling it real Neville style, not theatrically but naturally. Think of someone who has a driver's license. They don't wake up every day proving to themselves they can drive, they just know they can. That familiarity, that effortless certainty, is the essence of assumption. It's not excitement, it's recognition. He explains that assumption is the language of the subconscious. Desire speaks in longing, assumption speaks in identity. When you assume, your subconscious receives the message, "This is who I am now." And because imagination creates reality, the world organizes itself to reflect that identity back to you. It's not magic, it's the structure of consciousness. Neville called it living in the end because assumption means you mentally arrive before you physically arrive. He often tells the story of someone who wanted to manifest a relationship. Desire kept them waiting for signs, hoping for text messages, analyzing every move. But once they assumed the end manifestation, feeling loved, chosen, secure, the anxiety dissolved. They no longer waited for someone else to confirm their worth. They became the version of themselves who is already deeply loved. And shortly after, the outer relationship shifted to match the inner assumption. He knows that assumption feels uncomfortable at first. People are so used to waiting for evidence before believing. But Neville inverted this logic. You believe first, then evidence appears. Assumption is not about forcing yourself to feel amazing. It's about letting the fulfilled state feel ordinary. When you shift identity, the desire stops being something you're chasing and becomes something that quietly belongs to you. He emphasizes that the greatest barrier to assumption is the belief that you must earn your desires. But creation is finished. Nothing needs to be earned, only accepted. Assumption is the acceptance. It's the moment you stop negotiating with your desire and finally claim it as a natural expression of who you are. When someone truly grasps this, they stop asking, "When?" and start saying, "Of course." As he transitions into the next idea, he gently points out that many people stay stuck because they circle their desires with longing, thinking their desire itself will bring results. But understanding why longing delays manifestation becomes the key to the next topic. He begins by saying something that usually makes people pause. Longing feels emotional, poetic, even spiritual, but it's still lack. Wanting intensely doesn't bring the desire closer. It keeps it suspended in the future. When someone circles their desire with longing, they rehearse the feeling of absence over and over again. And the subconscious, which only understands states, takes that as instruction. It says, "Oh, you want? Then you are the one who wants." And so life mirrors that back. He explains that when people say, "I want this so much," they think it proves commitment. But to consciousness, wanting means, "I don't have." Neville Goddard always pointed out that the state of desire and the state of fulfillment are opposites. You can't stand in lack and expect possession. It's like sitting in the audience at a concert and insisting you're on stage performing. The desire may be real, but you're still sitting in the wrong seat. He uses a simple analogy. Imagine a person craving warmth on a cold day. They stand outside the house, staring at the fireplace through the window, telling themselves, "I want that warmth so badly." Longing doesn't heat their body. Stepping into the house does. Longing is outside the door. Living the desire is inside. And the law of assumption explained through this lens becomes clear. You don't move by yearning. You move by stepping into the state where what you desire already exists. He has seen people inadvertently trap themselves because longing feels like progress. It feels active. They visualize passionately, journal intensely, pray desperately. But everything they do carries the undertone of, "I'm not there yet." The energy of effort sends a message that possession is still out of reach. The more dramatic the longing, the further away the fulfillment feels. Desire can be magnetic, but longing is repelling. He often says that living the desire feels strangely mundane at first. It doesn't have the emotional high of longing. It feels settled, grounded, familiar, as if the thing you once wanted has gently landed in your lap and become yours. That's the essence of the wish-fulfilled Neville method. The fulfilled state isn't desperate, tense, or longing. It's quiet certainty. It's the emotional equivalent of recognizing your own face in the mirror. He gives an example many people relate to. Someone wanting to manifest money. Longing for money creates an inner narrative of, "I don't have enough." They watch videos, read books, do affirmations, all useful, yes, but often rooted in desire rather than possession. Living the desire means embodying financial ease now, breathing differently, making decisions differently, trusting differently. It's not about spending recklessly. It's about assuming the end manifestation from within. He explains that longing always places the desire in the future. It creates psychological distance, but living the desire pulls the desired outcome into the present moment. It collapses the gap. And because imagination creates reality, the world responds not to what you desire, but to what you possess internally. The moment someone stops wanting and starts being, the outer world has no choice but to adjust. He gently reminds the listener that they've experienced this shift before in small ways. Think about something you once longed for, a job, a relationship, a skill. Once you had it, the longing evaporated, the desire transformed into normalcy. You didn't wake up every day thinking, "I have this." You simply lived it. The same principle applies to every manifestation, whether big or small. Fulfillment becomes identity. He often tells people that longing is a habit, not a state. Many grew up hearing phrases like, "Pray and wait," or "Good things take time," or "Maybe one day." That conditioning keeps people in a perpetual future tense. Neville flipped that script by teaching people to inhabit the feeling now. Feeling it real Neville style means stepping out of waiting and into ownership. The inner shift breaks the habit of longing. And as he transitions into the next topic, he invites the listener to consider a crucial question. If longing keeps desire in the future, then how do we enter the state where the desire is already complete? He loves beginning this topic with a gentle pause, inviting the listener to truly reflect. Because this is where most people get stuck without realizing it. Imagining about the end feels productive. They picture the desire, think of how amazing it would be, daydream about the possibilities. But imagining from the end, that's different. That's stepping into the identity of the one who already has the result. One is fantasy, the other is creation. Neville Goddard drew this line sharply because the distinction determines everything. He explains that thinking about the end keeps the desire in the realm of one day. You're like someone staring at a travel brochure, dreaming about the destination but never packing the suitcase. They analyze the photos, visualize the landscapes, talk about how beautiful it would be, but their body is still on the couch. Imagining from the end is boarding the plane internally. It's assuming the end manifestation now, not later, and the subconscious responds to that immediacy. He uses the analogy of rehearsing a future conversation. Thinking about the end sounds like, wouldn't it be nice if this went well? Imagining from the end sounds like, it already went well, here's how I feel afterward. That slight shift changes the emotional climate entirely. One leaves you hoping, the other positions you as the person who has already crossed the finish line. And because imagination creates reality, your world organizes itself around the version of you who has already won. He has met countless people practicing the law of assumption explained, but they unknowingly keep themselves in the distance. They visualize getting the job, receiving the message, having the money, but they see it as an event happening to them, not an identity they are embodying. Neville used to say, "You must feel yourself right into the situation of the answer fulfilled." Thinking about the end keeps you outside looking in. Imagining from the end places you inside the fulfillment. He tells the story of someone who wanted to manifest a home. They spent months imagining the house, the rooms, the furniture, but always as a future dream. One day he asked them to imagine sitting on their own couch in that home at night, scrolling on their phone like any normal evening, not dreaming, living. That tiny shift created a new state. Within weeks, circumstances moved in ways they couldn't have predicted. Imagining from the end is subtle, but it's the creative act. He explains that imagining from the end feels natural, even casual. It's not dramatic. It doesn't require fireworks. It's the emotional equivalent of recalling something familiar. When someone imagines about the end, there's excitement, longing, tension. When they imagine from the end, there's relief, there's calm, there's, of course. That's the wish-fulfilled Neville method in action, quiet, grounded, certain. He often illustrates it like this. Thinking about the end is like watching a movie trailer. Imagining from the end is already living in the full movie. The trailer gives you glimpses, but keeps you waiting. The movie absorbs you into its world. The subconscious only accepts the movie, never the trailer. And this is why so many people repeat affirmations, visualizations, and techniques without results. They're watching the trailer of their desire instead of stepping into the film itself. He emphasizes that imagining from the end doesn't mean forcing emotion or pretending something is true. It simply means letting the end become your inner home, feeling it real Neville style. You don't hope it happens, you let it feel done. Even if it's just for 30 seconds, those 30 seconds are enough to shift states, and once the state shifts, the desire begins its path into physical expression. He knows the mind tries to overcomplicate this because it wants logic, steps, proof. But consciousness doesn't create with logic, it creates with assumption. When someone imagines from the end, they bypass doubt. They enter the fulfilled identity without negotiating with their senses. And the moment they do, the external world starts catching up, piece by piece. It's not magic, it's alignment. And as he moves toward the next topic, he gently raises another question. If imagining from the end is the creative act, what practical techniques can help someone step into that fulfilled identity more easily? He always emphasizes that the imaginal scene doesn't need to be dramatic or cinematic. Most people think they must create long, elaborate visualizations, but Neville Goddard taught the opposite. The subconscious responds best to small, simple, repeatable scenes that imply the end result. A single gesture, a short message, a familiar interaction, one tiny moment that carries the emotional signature of fulfillment. The simpler the scene, the more powerful the assumption. He explains that a short imaginal scene works because it imitates real life. Life happens in micro moments: a hug, a smile, a notification, a sigh of relief. When someone creates a concise scene, they anchor themselves into a version of reality where the desire is already complete. For example, someone wanting money might imagine a friend saying, "Wow, things finally worked out for you, didn't they?" That one sentence, felt as real, implies everything without having to visualize millions of details. He often guides people into choosing a scene that feels natural to them. If someone wants a relationship, they might imagine lying in bed, feeling a warm arm around them, and hearing a soft, "I'm so glad you're here." If someone wants a job, they might imagine closing their laptop after receiving a "welcome to the team" email. If someone wants healing, they might imagine their doctor saying, "Everything looks perfect now." These are small scenes, but they carry the entire fulfilled state. He uses the analogy of movie directing. Directors choose one powerful shot to convey an entire story: a close-up of a tear, a handshake, a doorway moment. One image can speak louder than 1,000 explanations. In manifestation, your imaginal scene is that close-up. It encapsulates the identity of someone who is already living the desire. That's how the wish-fulfilled Neville method bypasses the mind's resistance. It communicates directly with the subconscious through implication, not force. He reminds the listener that the imaginal scene should feel like a memory, not a fantasy. Thinking about the desire creates longing. Imagining from the desire creates ownership. So he encourages people to repeat the scene until it feels less like "something I hope happens" and more like "something that happened." When it starts to feel like a real memory, the state has shifted. That's the law of assumption explained in its simplest form: identity expressed through feeling. He often shares a personal example. Years ago, before teaching full-time, he wanted to shift his career. Instead of visualizing stages, audiences, or huge success, he imagined a friend casually asking, "How does it feel to finally be doing what you love?" That one question carried the essence of the fulfilled identity. He repeated it nightly until the excitement faded and the naturalness took over. Within months, opportunities aligned in ways he never planned consciously. He says the key is emotional precision, not visual detail. The scene should evoke the done feeling: relief, gratitude, quiet satisfaction. Feeling it real Neville style means entering the scene with your senses: the sound of a voice, the glow of a phone screen, the weight of a hug, the warmth of a smile. When the scene feels like something you could easily recall tomorrow, you've reached the sweet spot where imagination creates reality. He warns that many people complicate the process by asking, "What's the perfect scene?" But the perfect scene is always the simplest one that implies fulfillment. Neville used the example of shaking someone's hand and hearing them congratulate you. Not a long speech, just a simple gesture, a nod, a brief exchange. That's enough to move consciousness into the state of possession. He reminds the listener that the imaginal scene only works when paired with a relaxed mind. It should be done in a state akin to sleep: drowsy, soft, open. This is when the subconscious is most receptive. It's like planting a seed in fertile soil. You don't need to force it, water it obsessively, or dig it up to check on it. You simply plant it and let the state sustain it. The outer world will follow in its own perfect timing. And as he leads into the next topic, he gently suggests that even the most powerful imaginal scene can only take root when the inner feeling matches the fulfilled identity. Which naturally brings us to the next subject: the emotional shift that transforms desire into reality. He always says that if there is a moment of magic in Neville's teachings, it's this one: the shift in feeling. Not the visualization, not the words, not the technique, the feeling. Feeling is the secret, because feeling is the state, and the state is what the subconscious accepts as truth. When someone moves from wanting into being, the emotional climate changes. It becomes quieter, softer, grounded. Desire carries tension, fulfillment carries ease. He explains that gratitude is often the first sign that the shift has happened, not the forced gratitude people try to practice, but the natural kind, the type that bubbles up effortlessly when something feels settled. It's the same feeling a person gets after receiving good news, when the body relaxes and the mind stops searching for solutions. Gratitude, in the context of manifestation, is not a practice. It's a symptom of already having. He often tells people that if they still feel anxious, impatient, or desperate, they're likely still in desire. Those emotions don't mean something is wrong, they simply mean the state hasn't shifted yet. When someone enters the wish-fulfilled Neville method, there's a sense of it's done even if the 3D hasn't changed. That certainty is not loud, it's subtle. It's a quiet comfort, as if the inner world has finally exhaled. He uses a relatable example. Imagine someone waiting for a package. Before the delivery, they keep checking the tracking number, refreshing the screen, listening for the doorbell. That's desire. But once the package is in their hands, they stop checking. The tension dissolves immediately. The shift to naturalness is unmistakable. That's the feeling of fulfillment. And you can embody that same energy through imagination long before the physical result arrives. He explains that calm certainty doesn't feel like excitement. People often confuse excitement with manifestation, but excitement belongs to desire. Fulfillment feels normal, even ordinary. Think of receiving your paycheck. You might be glad, yes, but you don't jump around the room. You expect it because it's yours. That same naturalness is what signals to the subconscious that you are living the desire Neville Goddard style, not chasing it. He sometimes tells people that the fulfilled state feels anticlimactic at first, not because it's dull, but because it has no tension. The emotional drama disappears. He once said, "Fulfillment is a rest, and rest feels simple." This is why imagination creates reality, because your inner world no longer vibrates with wanting. It vibrates with possession. That's the shift the world responds to. He emphasizes that people miss this because they expect a big emotional transformation, fireworks, breakthroughs, deep waves of joy. But the real shift is much gentler. It feels like closing a book after finishing the final chapter. A sense of, yes, that's complete. When someone reaches that emotional conclusion inwardly, the law of assumption, explained, becomes an effortless process of watching life rearrange itself in alignment. He gives an example of someone manifesting a relationship. In desire, they overthink texts, analyze signs, worry and hope. But when they shift into being, there's a natural assumption of love. They feel secure. They don't crave reassurance. They don't search for clues. The state becomes stable. And the outer relationship often adjusts quickly because the person is no longer broadcasting lack. He explains that feeling is the bridge between imagination and physical reality. The imaginal scene plants the seed, but the feeling waters it. Without the emotional shift, the seed remains dormant. Gratitude, calmness, and naturalness are the inner indicators that the subconscious has accepted the new identity. Once accepted, the rest unfolds without strain. Feeling is the moment the desire stops being a dream and becomes an internal reality. And as he transitions to the next topic, he gently reminds the listener that while feeling is powerful, maintaining that inner identity becomes the next challenge, especially when the physical world seems slow to catch up. And that is where persistence enters the conversation. He always begins this topic with a truth most people don't like to admit. The 3D world often gets louder right when the inner shift has begun. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because old states are dissolving. When the outer world challenges you, delays, silence, financial setbacks, mixed signals, the instinct is to fall back into desire, to start wanting again, to panic. But desire is the old state. Persistence is the bridge to the new one. He explains that persistence doesn't mean fighting reality or forcing positivity. It's not about ignoring what you see. It's about remembering who you've become. When someone shifts into the identity of the fulfilled version of themselves, the 3D may still reflect the previous state for a while. Neville Goddard often said this is the echo. You don't argue with an echo, you wait for it to fade. Persistence is staying in the new state long enough for the echo to die out. He gives the analogy of a thermostat. Imagine setting the temperature in your home to a comfortable level. Even after adjusting it, the room doesn't warm instantly. The heater clicks on, the air circulates, and the temperature slowly rises. If you panic during the first minute and change the setting back, you never reach the desired temperature. Persistence is keeping the setting, your state, steady. The environment will adjust. It always does. He often tells people that falling back into desire is just a sign that the physical world still holds more authority in their minds than their imagination. But imagination creates reality, not circumstances. The real power is maintaining inner alignment, even when the outer picture looks outdated. Someone wanting love may see no messages yet. Someone wanting money may see bills piling up. Someone wanting healing may still feel symptoms. But the fulfilled identity doesn't ask for proof. It embodies the answer. He shares a relatable example, someone manifesting a job. After assuming the end, they receive a rejection email. Desire screams, "See, it's not working." But persistence whispers, "This is just the old echo." If they maintain the fulfilled identity, feeling like the person who is already employed, the path continues unfolding. Often, a better offer appears. Neville taught that a rejection is simply a sign that the old state is clearing out. He emphasizes that persistence isn't about effort. It's gentle. It's quiet. It's more like returning to center than pushing forward. When doubts arise, you don't battle them. You breathe back into your chosen identity. You remind yourself of the state you are living in. Feeling it real Neville style isn't something you do once. It's an emotional home you return to. And every return strengthens the identity of fulfillment. He reminds listeners that every assumption has a gestation period. Just like a seed planted in soil doesn't sprout instantly, manifestations unfold in perfect timing. If someone digs up the seed constantly to check on it, they stop its growth. Falling back into desire is the emotional equivalent of digging up the seed. Persistence is trusting that the seed is doing what seeds do, growing invisibly until it becomes visible. He often shares that the 3D world is the slowest part of creation. By the time something appears physically, it's already old news. The real creation happens in consciousness. That's why the law of assumption explained always points back to inner identity. The moment the identity stabilizes, the physical must mirror it, not by magic, but by design. Persistence ensures the identity remains stable long enough for the world to catch up. He encourages people to treat challenges as opportunities, not obstacles. When 3D contradicts your assumption, it's a chance to practice being the new version of yourself. Someone in the fulfilled state responds differently to setbacks. They move differently, speak differently, think differently. And the more they practice this identity, the faster the outer reality bends. Persistence isn't punishment, it's embodiment. And as he transitions into the next topic, He naturally points out that persistence produces early inner shifts before outer evidence appears, subtle but powerful signs that you are already living the desire. He loves explaining this topic because it's where people finally see the first proof that the inner work is paying off, not through physical manifestations yet, but through emotional and energetic shifts. He always tells them, before your desire shows up in your hands, it shows up in your nervous system. Reduced anxiety is usually the very first sign. The mind stops looping, the heart stops gripping, and the body finally relaxes. It's the quiet onset of the fulfilled state. He explains that anxiety naturally dissolves because wanting carries tension, but having carries ease. When someone moves into the wish-fulfilled Neville method, they no longer feel the need to control every detail or search for signs obsessively. The desperation fades, replaced by a steady, calm certainty. They stop checking their phone constantly, stop refreshing their bank account, stop rereading conversations for clues. Peace becomes the new normal. He often says that synchronicities start appearing once the state stabilizes. Not because the universe suddenly starts sending signs, but because the person finally becomes aligned with the version of themselves who is living the desire Neville Goddard style. They overhear conversations about the exact thing they're manifesting. They meet people connected to their dream. Opportunities that seemed impossible suddenly show up. These are not random coincidences. They're reflections of the new identity taking form. He tells the story of someone manifesting a financial breakthrough. Before the money appeared, they started seeing the same numbers repeatedly, receiving unexpected small discounts, hearing conversations about abundance everywhere. These weren't the manifestation, they were the foreshadowing. A shift in consciousness always produces a ripple before the wave. Synchronicities are simply the ripples that reveal what's unfolding. He explains that another early sign is the sense that the desire feels closer, even if nothing has changed physically. There's a strange familiarity like, I've been here before, or this already belongs to me. Neville said the fulfilled state should feel natural, not extraordinary. So when the desire starts feeling less like a dream and more like an expectation, that's a sign the subconscious has accepted it. Imagination creates reality through naturalness, not intensity. He often compares this feeling to preparing for a vacation. Before the actual trip, something shifts internally. You start imagining yourself there, planning meals, picturing the experiences. Even though you're still physically home, emotionally, you've already gone. The same thing happens with manifestation. You emotionally arrive before physically arriving. That inner arrival is a sign the bridge is unfolding. He reminds listeners that this inevitable feeling is not forced. It doesn't come from affirmations repeated 500 times or visualizations done with strain. It comes naturally when the identity of fulfillment begins to settle. It feels like a quiet confidence, a sense of, I don't know how or when, but I know it's done. That's the law of assumption explained through lived experience, not theory. He gives another example. Someone manifesting a relationship may still be single in the 3D, but they suddenly feel supported, chosen, loved, without needing external validation. The old fear disappears. They stop worrying about timing. They feel connected to their desire. This shift in self-concept is the true manifestation. The outer relationship becomes a reflection of it. He emphasizes that early signs are not rewards, they're confirmations. They show that the person is no longer craving, but embodying. Reduced anxiety shows they've stopped chasing. Synchronicities show alignment. The sense of inevitability shows the state has become stable. These are the subtle whispers that the inner reality is already forming itself outward. And as he transitions into the next topic, he gently leads the listener to the next profound insight. When you fully embody the fulfilled state, the desire stops feeling special because it becomes part of who you are. He always begins this topic by saying something that surprises people. Your desire should eventually feel boring, not disappointing, not anticlimactic, just natural, ordinary, expected. When someone has deeply embodied a fulfilled state, the desire no longer feels like a dream or a distant possibility. It feels like everyday life. Neville Goddard often said that the hallmark of fulfillment is naturalness. The extraordinary becomes ordinary because the identity of fulfillment has settled into place. He explains that the moment a desire stops feeling special is the moment it has become part of your self-concept. You don't wake up excited about having your name, your face, or your address. You simply live with them. They belong to you. In the same way, money, love, success, or healing begin to feel like natural extensions of who you are. They stop being goals and become traits. That shift is the essence of the wish-fulfilled Neville method. He shares the analogy of learning to drive. In the beginning, the idea of driving feels thrilling, intimidating, and overwhelming. But once mastered, it becomes second nature. You don't celebrate every time you get behind the wheel. It's normal. That's what deep embodiment feels like. You no longer obsess, fear, or chase. The desire has been absorbed into your identity so completely that the emotional charge disappears. What was once extraordinary now feels expected. He often tells people that the 3D world shows the result after this internal normalization. Many mistakenly believe that manifestation happens when they feel excitement. But excitement belongs to desire. Fulfillment belongs to naturalness. Imagination creates reality not through emotional fireworks, but through familiarity. When something feels familiar to the subconscious, it eventually becomes physical. He gives an example of someone manifesting abundance. In the early stages, thinking about wealth may feel exhilarating or even overwhelming. But as the state deepens, wealth begins to feel like a normal part of their life. They stop fantasizing about it. They stop checking for signs. They stop obsessing over numbers. Abundance becomes part of how they walk, speak, think, and decide. That quiet, internal stability is a sign of true embodiment. He explains that when the desire stops feeling special, you stop pedestalizing it. You stop treating it as the thing that will change everything. Instead, you understand that you are the one creating the experience from the inside out. This dissolves the hierarchy between you and your desire. You no longer feel separate from it. You are living the desire Neville Goddard style, not chasing it, but expressing it. He sometimes mentions that people resist this naturalness because they confuse it with apathy, but naturalness is not lack of appreciation. It's ownership. It's the energy of someone who already has. Think of a person who is deeply loved. They don't wake up every day shocked that someone cares for them. They simply know it. That knowing is the foundation of the fulfilled identity. He reminds listeners that deep embodiment also means you stop trying. Trying belongs to desire. Being belongs to fulfillment. When you fully embody the end, you don't feel the need to convince yourself anymore. The state holds itself effortlessly. This is the law of assumption explained through lived identity. You become the container for your desire, and the desire naturally fits. He explains that when the desire becomes your new normal, the outer manifestation typically flows in quietly, sometimes even subtly. People often say it just happened, or it came together so naturally, because the internal work had already been done. The external simply followed. Manifestation ceases to feel like a miracle and begins to feel like the most logical thing in the world. And as he transitions into the final topic, he gently points out that the ultimate purpose of desire isn't to keep you wanting, it's to guide you into becoming, which leads naturally into the final revelation. He begins by reminding the listener that desire was never meant to be a place of residence. It was only meant to be a signal, a whisper from your deeper self showing you what is already possible for you. Neville Goddard taught that desire is your permission slip, not your destination. You were never meant to linger in wanting. You were meant to step into becoming. You were meant to wear the fulfilled state as naturally as your own skin. He explains that choosing the fulfilled state is the act that transforms your entire inner world. It's not about forcing positive thoughts, repeating endless affirmations or waiting for perfect conditions. It's about deciding, quietly, simply, powerfully, that the version of you who already has the desire is the version you are stepping into now. The decision happens in the imagination first, because imagination creates reality long before the physical catches up. He often tells people that inhabiting the fulfilled state is like switching homes. You pack up the emotional belongings of the old self, the doubts, the fears, the longing, and you move into a new inner address. At first, it feels a bit unfamiliar, like walking into a freshly painted room. But the more you live there, the more it becomes home. Eventually, it becomes your new default, your new normal, your new identity. He reminds the listener that the world responds not to who you wish to be, but to who you are being. The law of assumption explained is profoundly simple. Whatever state you occupy becomes the filter through which life organizes itself. Occupy lack, and lack echoes back. Occupy fulfillment, and fulfillment echoes back. It's not personal, it's structural. Consciousness is a mirror. Your outer life is the reflection of your inner stance. He shares an example of someone manifesting love. When they stayed in desire, everything felt distant. Text messages were overanalyzed, silence felt painful, and every small detail triggered insecurity. But when they chose the fulfilled identity of someone loved, secure, and valued, something shifted. Their energy changed. Their expectations changed, their emotional baseline changed, and soon the outer relationship began matching that inner truth. He explains that choosing the fulfilled state doesn't mean ignoring 3D reality. It means refusing to let 3D define your state. You may still see old circumstances for a while, but you no longer bow to them. You respond from who you've chosen to be, not from who you were. This is the essence of living in the end. It's spiritual maturity, it's emotional leadership, it's sovereignty in consciousness. He often says that the fulfilled state is not a feeling you try to maintain, it's an identity you step into. Once you become the version of yourself who has the desire, everything you do, think, and assume naturally aligns with that identity. The desire stops being an aspiration and becomes an expression. You no longer chase it, you live it. And as you live it, the physical world rearranges itself in response. He emphasizes that the moment someone truly chooses the fulfilled state, the desire loses its grip. It stops being something out there and becomes something in here. That internal shift is the true manifestation. The physical result is just the echo, the after effect, the external confirmation of an internal fact. And when it arrives, it will feel inevitable, even obvious, because you've been living it long before you saw it. He gently reminds listeners that this path is not about perfection, it's about direction. Even if they wobble, doubt, or slip into old states, they can always choose again. Every moment is an invitation to return to the fulfilled identity. Every second is a doorway back into being. That's the power of consciousness. It's always accessible. And as he lets the final word settle, he subtly opens the next loop. Once all of this is understood, how does someone put it into a narrative that grabs attention from the very start? That's where the introduction comes in. Before you leave, take a moment to breathe and notice something inside you. Something shifted. Not because of the words themselves, but because your awareness finally recognized what Neville Goddard always emphasized. The power has never been outside. It has always lived in the state you choose to occupy. And now that you see the difference between desiring and living the desire, the question becomes, what state will you choose the moment this video ends? Ask yourself, are you still waiting for signs to feel secure? Or are you willing to let the security come from within first? Are you hoping your dream will find you one day? Or are you ready to step into the version of yourself who already has it? Because the truth is simple. The world can't give you what you refuse to become. The mirror can only reflect the face you show it, and now you know how to show it the face of fulfillment, the calm certainty, the natural confidence, the identity of someone already living in the end. So take what you've learned today and apply it. Choose the feeling, assume the state, live from the end, not toward it. And if this helped you awaken something inside, a memory of who you truly are, then join this journey with me. Subscribe to the channel, activate the notifications, and stay close. There's much more to learn, much more to embody, and much more to transform. Your new reality begins the moment you decide to live it.